well-developed sense of personality, and they all agree that Jones, who was described by one as a drill sergeant type, lacked the acumen to formulate the plans. 4. The plans were remarkable for their detail. For example, the men were told that the train would be traveling at 35 miles per hour, according to the Department of Transportation regulations covering shipment of dangerous cargo. The men were told the timetable the train would follow from its point of origin in Dugway Proving Grounds, Utah, through the state. The men were told of the existence of impedance trip sensors in the rails, and were instructed in relay timing mechanisms involved. They were told that the insecticide would be stored in 500-pound canisters of two varieties, one kind painted yellow, the other black. They were told that they must steal one yellow canister and one black canister. 2 yellows or 2 blacks would not do. Equally important is what the men were not told. They were not told that the train would be guarded. This is an important point. It means either that plans were drawn up for the robbery 1 month before, when there were no guards on the trains, or else that the presence of the guards was known by the planners who elected not to inform the men. This point is still in debate. The men were also not told why they were stealing the insecticide in the first place. Significantly, none of them asked. Apparently, it was a matter of total indifference to them. 5. They remained in the wood-frame house in Ramrock until 8 p.m. Then each man was issued a machine gun and a pistol. The machine guns were of the usual variety, that is, war surplus equipment sold with plugged barrels. Some other party had simply machined new barrels and replaced the original plugged barrels. CF Memorandum 245/779, Abuses of War Surplus Weaponry. The men then climbed aboard a Land Rover which was stored in the garage of the house. It had apparently been there waiting for some weeks because it was dusty. They drove off into the desert to meet the train. 6. They arrived at an unnamed site in northeast Utah shortly after 2 a.m. They carried out their preparations quickly and efficiently in the light of a full moon. One man was sent down the tracks until he found the impedance trip sensor. He blocked the mechanism of this sensor by attaching an electronic override device. Thus, no one knew for 6 hours that the train had been stopped further up the tracks. It was assumed that the trip sensor had broken down. Meanwhile, 4 other men walked across the sand toward a half-dozen cattle grazing nearby. The robbery site was minimal rangeland and had been chosen specifically because of this. The men shot the steer nearest to the tracks. The other cattle ran off at the sound of the shot. The men looped ropes around the dead steer and dragged it across the railroad tracks. The animal was doused with gasoline, and a timing device was attached to it. Then all 7 men climbed aboard the Land Rover and rode it to a nearby hiding place behind some low dunes. They waited approximately 15 minutes before the train appeared in the distance. The men were surprised to see that it was a government train consisting of 3 flat cars lettered U.S. government property on the sides. They were also surprised to see an armored caboose at the end of the train. 7. The engine slowed, apparently as the engineer sighted the obstacle across the tracks. When the train stopped, the timing device caused the dead steer to burst into flames. At that moment, 6 of the men ran forward, intending to remove the canisters. There was some scattered firing from the armored caboose. One man ran up to it, stuck his machine gun into an armored port, and delivered a burst of fire to the interior. All 5 soldiers and 1 physician inside the caboose were killed. The engineer was also killed a few moments later. 8. The men unloaded 2 canisters from the train, 1 black and 1 yellow. Each was marked with lettering so vivid that the men remembered it well. Stenciled warnings to the effect that the canisters contained highly dangerous chemicals. They carried the canisters across the desert to a flat location nearby. They set them down 100 yards apart and burned a red flare near each. 9. 2 or 3 minutes passed, and then 2 helicopters appeared over the horizon. The helicopters landed in tandem alongside the flares. They were commercial helicopters of a nondescript nature. The only unusual aspect